ॐ पृथिवी शान्तिरन्तरिक्षगं शान्तिर्द्यौः शान्तिर्दिशः शान्तिरवान्तरदिशा शान्तिरग्निः शान्तिर्वायुः शान्तिरादित्यः शान्तिश्चन्द्रमा शान्तिर्नक्षत्राणि शान्तिरापः शान्तिरोषधयः शान्तिर्वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्गौः शान्तिरजा शान्तिरश्वः शान्तिः पुरुषः शान्तिर्ब्रह्म शान्तिर्ब्राह्मणः शान्तिः शान्तिरेव शान्तिः शान्तिर्मे Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, Sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety within us. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our own hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Asato ma satkamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya, aviravirmayeti, rudrayatte dakshinam mukham, tena mam pahi nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. So we shall resume today our study of the Gita. Last Sunday, we saw the historical context of how the Gita is primarily a dialogue between Sanjaya, the charioteer of the Kauravas, and Dhritarashtra, the blind king. The Gita begins with the question asked by Dhritarashtra, the king, to this Sanjaya, who has returned to the capital on the 10th day of the battle to report that Bhishma has fallen. And we saw that the king asks him, what did my children do? What exactly happened in the first 9 days? What has happened in the battle so far? And then Sanjaya begins describing it. And we saw about how all the leaders, the main warriors from both sides, they blow their conches. And then Arjuna makes a somewhat unusual request, saying, please take my chariot in the middle of the two armies so that I can see who are on the other side. And then Krishna takes the chariot between the two armies, and that's when Arjuna sees his own people, all of his relatives, friends, his close companions with whom he has to fight. And then Arjuna gives a fairly long discourse. So much of the first chapter, as we saw, is actually what Arjuna is telling Krishna. Krishna hardly ever speaks. And the points that Arjuna makes are something that we all can identify with. He speaks about the evil of war, how the war primarily means death and destruction, how it'll orphan children, families will be devastated, members of the family will be killed or badly injured. And so there is really no good outcome. And that is as true now as it was at the time of the battlefield more than 3,000 years ago. Another thing that Arjuna mentions is that even if we were to win this battle, we won't be able to enjoy the victory. I mean, how can you enjoy when your own people with whom you would want to spend the rest of your life, that they have been killed or maimed, with their blood on our hands? How can we even savor that victory? And so, with giving a bunch of reasons like this, and of course, how killing or violence would lead to even bad results in the afterlife. So he gives a bunch of reasons, and then the chapter concludes with Arjuna saying, I'm not going to fight. So what is Krishna's response to that? And that is how the second chapter begins. If you open the second chapter in your books, you will see at the very beginning, it begins with the one verse of Sanjaya. He says, Tam tatha kripaya vishtam ashrupurna kulekshanam vishidantamidam vakyam uvacha madhusudanaha. To him who was thus overwhelmed with pity and sorrowing, and whose eyes were dimmed with tears, Madhusudana spoke these words. And now Krishna begins. The two verses, verses 2nd and 3rd in the 2nd chapter, are very profound verses. Swami Vivekananda once said that even if someone did not read the Gita, if he would read just these two verses, the verses 2 and 3, which we'll read just now, he said, you will understand the main purpose of the Gita. So a profound meditation is called for on these verses. So what is Krishna saying? Kutastva kashmalamidam vishame samupasthitam anaryam anaryajushtamasvargyam akirtikaram arjuna. In such a crisis, whence comes upon thee, O Arjuna, this dejection, un-Arya-like, disgraceful, and contrary to the attainment of heaven? And verse 3, Klaibhyam asmagamah partha naitadvai upapadyate kshudram hridayadaurbalyam tyaktvotishtha parantapa. Yield not to unmanliness, O son of Pritha, ill that it become thee. Cast off this mean faint-heartedness and arise, O scorcher of thine enemies. Now these are very strong words. Remember that Arjuna was the best archer in the world. Everyone feared him. And the very first thing that Krishna tells him, that this dejection that has come upon Arjuna is disgraceful. He said it is contrary to what and how good people react. He says it is mean faint-heartedness. Now those are pretty strong words. We don't know whether, clearly there was no one broadcasting what Krishna spoke. So maybe those who were nearby heard his words, or maybe only Arjuna heard it, we don't know. All that we know is, look at this whole scenario from the perspective of the soldiers in the periphery, both on the Pandava side and the Kaurava side. All that they saw was that suddenly the chariot which Krishna was guiding came in the middle of the two armies. Then they saw Arjuna speaking for a while with Krishna. So everyone is like watching from a distance. Something is going on. And then Krishna saying these few words. What's interesting here is that although this long discourse that Arjuna gave, giving his reasons about why he doesn't want to fight the war, how the war is terrible and so on, and Krishna's response to that really doesn't match, because he's telling about the evils of war, and then Krishna says, what a disgraceful mean-heartedness, and how cowardly what you're doing. So the question that comes to the mind is, what was Arjuna's problem? Was his problem this sudden realization that war is bad and he doesn't want to fight? Because Krishna doesn't contradict that. Krishna is not saying, you are wrong, the war is good, killing people is great. He doesn't say that. And Arjuna is not saying, oh, I'm feeling afraid, or I feel like running away from here. But Krishna's response to that seems as if the problem is not that the war is bad or good. That's not the point. The point is, as at least from these two verses that comes to us, is that something else is the problem. We'll see. Let's look at the verses that follow. And then Arjuna again starts on verse number 4, 5, 6. Look at these next three verses in which Arjuna says, oh, these people on the other side, Bhishma, Drona, my teacher, my grandfather, they are people whom I adore. And how can I would rather go begging, I would rather be homeless than kill them. And he says, if I kill them, even in this world, all my enjoyment and of wealth and desire will be stained with blood. Again, he's still kind of carrying on the argument that he had in the first chapter. And it seems to us that by this time, Arjuna has had some realization that my argument is not working. But not working is, we can almost be certain that Arjuna must have taken aback by Krishna saying, give up this unmanliness, rise up. And he's like, wait, that's not what I said. And so again he says, no, but these great people, how I can kill them. And by this time, it appears as if Arjuna is thinking, probably that's what I'm saying doesn't make sense to me, what to speak about it making sense to Krishna or to anybody else. And so verse number 7 is very important. So that's when we see the real reason coming out. So Arjuna says in verse 7, Karpanya dosho pahatasva bhavaha pritchami tvam dharma sammudha chetaha yashreyasya nishchitam bruhi tanme shishyasteham shadhimam tvam prapannam. With my nature overpowered by weak commiseration, with a mind in confusion about duty, I supplicate thee. Say decidedly what is good for me. I am thy disciple. Instruct me who have taken refuge in thee. And then in the next verse, Nahi prapashyami mamapanudyat yachoka mucho shanamindriyanam avapya bhuma vasapatnam riddham rajyam suranam apichadhipatyam. I do not see anything to remove this sorrow which blasts my senses, even were I to obtain unrivaled and flourishing dominion over the earth and mastery over the path, over gods. So this is where the real reason seems to be coming out. The real reason is not that, oh, I've suddenly I've had this revelation, war is bad. And I did not even think about it until this morning, until I came here. That was not the real reason. The real reason now, he says, I am confused. Confusion about duty. I do not know what to do. And then he says, I am thy disciple, instruct me. This is it's a very important. Shishyasteham shadhi mam tvam prapannam. In Vedantic tradition, the teacher may not begin giving instruction until the student specifically goes and requests to be taught. And this is important. The reason is that if a teaching is given when the student is not ready for it, the teaching will not have its effect. There is this one a Zen story which many of you may have heard. There is a story about a student who goes to a Zen master and says, these are the things I have studied, and I want an opportunity to study with you. And then the master looks at him, and then this person who has come keeps on saying, I have studied this, I have studied that, and keeps on telling about himself. And then he says, I would like to study here. And then the master said, but before that, why don't we have a cup of tea? Lots of tea references in Zen Buddhism. And therefore, so the visitor sits, and master gets up, makes a fresh tea in a kettle, brings it in a kettle, puts 2 cups, and starts pouring it into that student's cup. And he keeps on pouring. Even after the cup fills up, the tea starts flowing and wetting the whole place. And the student is like, what's wrong with him? He says, stop, stop, stop. What are you doing? This cup will not hold any more tea. It's already filled. And then the Zen master keeps the kettle at the side, looks at that student and says, that's the case with your head. He says, your head will not hold anything more. It's already, too much of trash is already filled in there. And unless you empty that, no new teaching can go. And so this is an important point to remember. Even whatever study we undertake, and specifically, of course, as we are seeing a study of the Gita or study of Vedanta, one thing that is stressed in the tradition, that both the teacher must be fit, the student must be fit. In the Kathopanishad, there is this beautiful portion in which the Upanishad says, Ascharyo Vakta Kushalosya Labdha. The teacher has to be wonderful, the student has to be wonderful. When both are qualified, it's then that the transference of knowledge occurs perfectly. And so here, when Arjuna specifically then has this a kind of an awakening which says, no, the real reason is not that I have suddenly become a pacifist, but the real reason is I'm confused. My mind is confused. I don't know what to do. I need your guidance. And some of us saw last Sunday, how the battlefield itself is a metaphor. In a sense, this life is a battlefield. And just like Arjuna is confused about his duty, many of us on a day-to-day basis, sometimes in smaller matters, sometimes in major matters, we are confused about what is the right thing for me to do. The choice between good and bad is easily taken care of course. If I have to choose between the right and the wrong, I must choose the right. If I have to choose between good and bad, I must choose good. No problem. But life is more complicated than merely choosing between good and bad. Oftentimes we have to choose between different shades of bad or different shades of what is not good. Sometimes good may not be an option at all. Sometimes we may have to choose between bad and worse, and there is no third option. So if we have to choose between bad and worse, then bad is a good choice in that context. And so a lot of these confusion about duty can come. Sometimes in Sanskrit they call it dharma sankata. Dharma sankata means I don't know the path of dharma. There's another thing that can occur also, not necessarily between good and bad, but also between if two of my duties suddenly present themselves before me, and of course at any given time I can do only one of those things. I cannot be in two different places at the same time. And therefore, again, we have to choose, should I do this, should I do that? Which gets priority. Now, books and texts and scriptures will tell us, and they will give us general direction about, well, always prioritize that which is good over that which is less good or bad. That's clear. For a spiritual standpoint, the way of grading our priorities might be that which will take me closer to God, closer to my spiritual ideal, the closer it will take me, that will have a higher priority. That would be one way of looking at it. So here we have then Arjuna specifically telling Krishna, please accept me as your student. And then from verse 11, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, that is where Krishna's teaching begins. So all these ancient acharyas, the great teachers of Vedanta who have written commentaries on the Gita, really begin their commentary primarily with this verse, because the teaching actually begins here. And if you see, it just begins with verse 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, all along, all through, we find Krishna teaching Arjuna the nature of the self. Again, in the beginning, it just seems like there is a disconnect again. The question that Arjuna had was not, what is the nature of the self? I am confused. No, he was not confused about the nature of the self. He was confused about what I should be doing now in this situation. And Krishna's response to that, by just launching into the nature of who this soul or the Atman really is, doesn't seem at first glance to be directly addressing Arjuna's confusion. But as the rest of the Gita will make it clear, that what duties we have are directly related to who we are. Our identity is crucial for the duties and responsibilities that come to us. Now let me explain. When we speak about duties and responsibility, there is somebody whose duties they are. There is somebody whose responsibilities they are. So think about it this way. When right now, in the waking state, all of us have, oh, these are my duties in life. These are my responsibilities in life. But when we go to sleep, what happens to those duties and responsibilities that I have? The things that are weighing on my mind related to this world and duties and responsibilities and so on, they get switched off in my dream. Because this I that I'm experiencing right now is I that is connected with my duties and responsibilities. But in the dream, there is a different sort of I there. How do I know it's a different I? Because sometimes in my dream, I might go to Hawaii and have a vacation there in my dream. Now, that's a different I because there's this one I which is sleeping in the bed. And there is this other I which is now gone, dreaming. And therefore, that I is not burdened with the duties and responsibilities of this I which has gone to sleep. Now then, when we go into deep sleep, well, there is no I there at all. So there are no duties, no responsibilities when we are fast asleep. even with this simple analogy, we can see that our duties and responsibilities are directly connected with my sense of I. The duties and responsibilities are not some objective realities disconnected from my identity. They are very much connected with my identity. And that's why Krishna begins by speaking about what is my identity? What is my true identity? Because only when that question is answered. Now, right now we might say, well, we have not become enlightened yet. Some of you may be, but in general, most of us, it looks like we have not been enlightened yet. And yet, we have ideas about this is my duty, this is my responsibility. When we do become enlightened, our idea about what my duty is, my responsibility is, that idea will change radically. In fact, as Krishna himself will say just a little later, that once I become enlightened, tasya karyam na vidyate. Such a person has no duty. So, again, it shows how duty is directly connected with our identity. And that's why Krishna begins his teaching, although it might seem as if it is not connected with Arjuna's problem, it is actually at the root of Arjuna's problem. And therefore, these verses, beginning with verse 13, as our childhood, youth, and old age in this body to the embodied soul, so also is the attaining of another body. Calm souls are not deluded. And then he goes on saying how the Atman is unaffected by material things. The Atman, the true self, is the only non-material part in our personality. Therefore, it doesn't have to follow the laws of matter. Look at verse number 16. It's a very important verse. He says, Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate satah, ubhayor api drushtontaha, tvanayos tattvadarshibhi. The unreal never is. The real never is not. Men possessed of the knowledge of the truth fully know both these. Now, what does it really mean? The real never is not, unreal never is. This is actually the definition of real in Vedanta. Because this is the question that we often ask. What is real? And our present understanding of real is, well, if I can see it, if I can touch it, if I can, let me see if this drink is real or not. Let's see. Feels real. And so that's really our explanation of what is real. Well, I can taste it, I can touch it, I can see it, I can smell it, I can hear it. It must be real. Until we pause a little bit and say, well, this, I might as well have been drinking this in my dream. And in my dream, if I were drinking it, this would appear as real then as it is appearing real now. So just because I can taste something or see something doesn't necessarily make it real. So how would we define reality? And that definition is given here. The real never is not. It means that which is real will always be present in my consciousness. It will never, ever disappear. By that definition, I mean, again, none of us kind of may analyze it this way, but that's how our mind thinks. The only reason we dismiss dreams as unreal is because they disappear. When I wake up, the dream disappears. Therefore, it's not real. If it were real, it would continue. How? The way this world continues. Day after day after day, the same world continues, but the dreams are only for the night. Therefore, they are unreal because they don't continue. I don't think any of us will fight with this logic. None of us thinks that, oh, I might wake up in the morning, but my dream world is continuing for the other people. We don't think so. That never really existed. I was only imagining it. Until we then see, well, this world is appearing real now the way my dream was appearing real then. So there is no way for me to conclusively know that this thing right now, this study that you and I are doing, may be in a dream. Because if this were not a dream, then this should not disappear when I go to sleep at night. But it does. This world which appears so real to us now totally disappears when I go to sleep. Just like the dream which appears real totally disappears when I wake up. That's one of the ways the dream experience and waking experience gets related. That in both the states, we are experiencing this objective universe, which gives a semblance of reality, but we know that because it doesn't last, that's not real. So this is a very important verse. Therefore, the creation of the world is not seen in Vedanta as something coming out of nothing. That there was nothing and then something came out of it. That can being come out of non-being? Can something come out of nothing? And the answer is no. And therefore the word that, although as I have sometimes pointed out, the word, although we use the word creation, theologically, it's a theological category, creation, and which really means something coming out of nothing. Now, that's not how the existence of this material world is seen in the Vedantic tradition. It is seen as something coming out of something else. And then we might have a chance to discuss it sometime in the future about how from this very subtle material particles, the gross material world comes, and how then again after a while it goes back into the seed form, and then it gets projected again, goes back into the seed form. So the movement is very cyclical. And that's one of the reasons it's also called samsara. It's continuously moving, continuously changing, and is ever repetitive. So this verse should be kept in mind, that the definition of what is real in Vedanta means that which is eternal is real. That which is not eternal is not real. And to just briefly mention, now that we have spoken about waking, dream, and sleep, what remains constant, what never disappears, is our awareness in the three states. So right now, in the waking state, I'm aware of this world. This world disappears when I go to sleep, but I'm aware of the dream world. The dream world disappears when I go into deep sleep. I'm aware of nothingness in my dream. In all these different states, what remains unchanged, undimmed, is awareness. And because awareness is something that never disappears, that is real. And all these verses in which Krishna is describing to Arjuna the nature of the self That nature of the self is that pure awareness. Now, when we study these verses, it's very important to remember that what Krishna is describing here is really the nature of the Atman. But who is that Atman? Atman is not something inside me. Atman is me. So this is important because, for instance, now when Krishna says here, this is never born, nor does it die. Look at verse number 20. Na jayate mriyate va kadachit nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyah ajo nitya shashvatoyam purano na hanyate hanyamane sharire. This is never born, nor does it die. It is not that not having been, it again comes into being. This is unborn, eternal, changeless, ever itself. It is not killed when the body is killed. A good way to read this is to, okay, let me put it this way. When we hear something, how does it enter into our being? How does it affect us? In Vedantic tradition, they say there is this teaching, the highest teaching that is given is Tattvamasi. You are that infinite being. And many of us have read this often. We try to think about it, becomes an object of our reflection, meditation, exploration. What does it mean that you are that infinite being? And as a result of that practice of reflection and meditation and so on, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, eventually we will know what it means. In fact, they say that if the student is of the highest category, then as soon as the teacher says, Tattvamasi, thou art that, the student at once gets the realization, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, I am that. So, this is what I meant by saying, how does it translate into us? So, when the teacher tells the student, you are that, the student realizes, yes, I am that. So, when we read, this is never born, nor does it die, how should I hear it? And so I should hear it and say, I am never born, I never die. I am unborn, I am eternal, I am changeless, I am ever itself. I am not killed when the body is killed. So this is one assignment for you. Don't think that just because you have graduated from your schools, there won't be any home assignments. So before next Sunday, in your own diary or in your own, wherever you like to scribble things down, try to look at these verses in the second chapter where Krishna begins his teaching. And wherever he says, this is what the Atman is, this is what the self is, put it in the first person. For instance, when he says, he that knows this to be indestructible, changeless, without birth, immutable, that is verse number 21, how can such a person slay or cause another to slay? And then I translate it into my mind and say, I am indestructible, I am changeless, I am without birth, I am immutable. How can I ever be slain, or how can I ever slay anybody else? So try to rewrite these verses in your own diary in a first person. And if you can do it well, and if you like this way of thinking, then read it every morning. This is a wonderful way to remind ourselves of our true nature. Begin the day by saying, right now I think of myself as a mortal human being, but this is who I really am. And that really helps. Rather than reading about the self is like this, the Atman is like that, as if it is description of somebody else. No, it's my description. This is how I am. That's the helpful way to read these initial verses. Okay, I'll take a look at this. We'll take a look to see if there are any questions. So if I am the Atman, can you please explain what part of me carries my samskaras? The Atman seems to be pure and eternal to carry those impressions. That's very true. So what carried my samskaras is my mind, my subtle body. The subtle body, the mind, is the storehouse of all my memories, my thoughts, my impressions. Therefore, when a person dies, what dies is the gross body. So what remains after death, what survives death, is the subtle body. The subtle body is the sense organs, the mind, the intellect, the ego, all of this, all the subtle part of my personality. That is where the samskaras remain. So when this subtle body then acquires another gross body, but because the mind is the same, the memories and samskaras remain. And that's why none of us is born into this world with a clean slate. We already come with some impressions of our past lives. And that is why people are different. No two people are identical. Even siblings who are born in the same house, the same set of parents, go to the same school, have same teachers, yet turn out to be so different. Because the subtle body that is inside them has already come with impressions from the earlier life. When you spoke about what is real, only eternal is real, a thought came to my mind, even time is not real. 9 a.m. in Seattle, 12 p.m. in Boston, yet we are listening to the same lecture at two different times. No. I don't think there are two different times. Time is the same. You are listening in real time. Maybe there may be a lag of 1 or 2 seconds, maybe. Just the vagaries of the internet. But the time is not different. The how would you say it? The marking of the time, how you note the time, that is different. I mean, well, what 11 or 12 or 9 or 7, just numbers. It's just a human convention that we have, that this is 12 midnight and this is, and again, we know that the time is not what the clock shows. What the clock shows is a label. What the clock shows is a division of time into these different numbers. So that we say 24 hours in a day, 30 days in a month. Why 24 hours? Why not 27? Why should the and second and minute should be of this duration? In some sense, that's pretty arbitrary. So somebody can come and create a whole new way of looking at time. Don't put this idea into the mind of Elon Musk or something. You suddenly have a new, greater confusion into this already confused world. But so time is not what the clock shows. Time, therefore, is, there's a lot that can be said about time. But for the time being, it's enough to know that the clock time is only one way of understanding the divisions of time. How does knowing the real self remove suffering? One simple way to address that is that what suffers is the body and the mind. We can see all of the troubles that any of us have in life are either physical, related to the body in some way, or related to the mind in some way. They are either intellectual, emotional, psychological. So either it's related to the body and mind. And knowing the real means really knowing that I am neither the body nor the mind. That there is this Atman, pure awareness. Because it is not material, it is not bound by material laws. Pure awareness is never born, it never dies. Pure awareness never falls sick. Pure awareness can never be infected. COVID-19, only the body and the mind by the suffering. But Atman, not afraid of COVID-19. Only if you have become enlightened, you are allowed to not wear a mask. Only if you are enlightened, you can, yeah. But again, I think even if you are enlightened, your body might still be infected. And therefore, it would be wise to have some social distancing. Although you may not suffer, your body might pass on that suffering to somebody else. But the Atman is not affected. That's the idea. And if I know the Atman, I will acquire such clarity of mind that I will have the ability to help remove other people's suffering as well. I might be able to help remove the suffering of others in a better way, in a more efficient way, if I have first found the way to remove my own suffering. If I am suffering, then there is very little, and the most I can do is empathize with somebody else's suffering and say, oh, you and I we are both in the same boat. But we are both suffering. If I'm drowning and I don't know how to swim, and the other person is drowning, I can say, oh, so sorry, but I'm not in the same boat. I'm in the same water. But if I know how to save myself, if I can swim, I might be able to help the other person also. So to being enlightened, therefore, is not just for myself. Yes, of course, I get liberated, I'm saved, but then I also acquire the ability to help others. So serving oneself is also a way to get the ability to serve others. Is it okay to say that Brahman is not real? It is the awareness of Brahman which is real. No. There is no awareness of Brahman. Brahman is awareness. Brahman is not something, oh, this is Brahman and I am aware of it. No. So you cannot say Brahman is not real because Brahman means real. To say Brahman is not real is like saying the real is not real. Brahman is existence. To say Brahman is not real is saying existence is non-existence. It doesn't make sense. So awareness of Brahman is like saying awareness of awareness. Not necessary. It's like with the light of the sun, we can see so many things. We don't need to bring another light to see the sun. The sun's light reveals everything and reveals the sun as well. So Brahman is awareness. With that light of Brahman's awareness, we become aware of all this, whether it's waking world, dream world, or deep sleep. But we don't need another awareness to become aware of Brahman, because Brahman's awareness reveals Brahman itself. In fact, Brahman is awareness, so they are not two different entities. Where does the Atman go when it leaves the body after the death? The Atman goes wherever the subtle body goes. The Atman, you see, in order for us to go somewhere, we have to be small. We have to be limited. It's like this. Now, in this room in which I am sitting, if I have to go from one place to another place in this room, I have to be smaller than this room. If I completely fill this room, then I cannot go anywhere in this room. because I am everywhere already. And therefore, the Atman itself cannot go anywhere because the Atman is everywhere. Atman, nothing is limited to Atman. Unfortunately, this Atman which is everywhere, all pervading, has now fallen asleep and is now dreaming and thinks, oh, I'm not everywhere. I'm just here. I'm just sitting here in this chair. That's what the Atman thinks. And then, of course, why does the Atman think this way? Because the Atman somehow has begun to see that this body is mine, this mind is mine. And so because the Atman limits itself to the body, that's why the Atman has to go wherever the body goes. It's a little bit like, no, I better not give some example because that will create more difficulties. So the Atman by itself doesn't go anywhere. An Atman in ignorance, identified with the body, goes with the subtle body after death. Where does the subtle body go? That's what the Upanishad says, yatha karma yatha shrutam. According to our karma, the subtle body goes wherever the effects of that karma can be experienced. So, and wherever the subtle body goes, the Atman clings onto it. Like the baby kangaroo sitting in the mother's pouch, the Atman is sitting there inside the subtle body and just goes. We wonder if the challenge that Arjuna had with facing his family in war, Bhishma Drona, is similar to how Vibhishana had to face his brother Ravana. Maybe, I don't know. Possible. Yep. Maybe, may not be. Really, I have no idea. But it does seem, there is similarity. He has to fight his brother. Although one difference would be, there Arjuna had to kill all those people. Yet Vibhishana did not kill Ravana. That was taken care of by Rama. So, but anyway, he was on the opposite side of his brother. To some extent, the situation is identical, yes. Even the slightest understanding of ancient and eternal nature of the self makes things of mundane life very difficult. It seems very futile. I would think that the daily life, one thing is the referring to the life itself as mundane life. That's really a little understanding of the self. Most people do not think of this life, it's mundane life. It's only people who read about Vedanta and think about, there is this higher reality, there is the Atman. They think, compared to that, this is only mundane. And that's true. So that's one change that has already occurred. And in a way, yes, compared to that highest reality, this is mundane, this is kind of futile, but not completely futile. I say it's not completely futile because when I do become enlightened, not just light understanding of the reality, but I see that reality as clearly as I'm able to see this palm of my hand, then yeah, everything is futile. But until I have not reached that state, it will be wrong for me to say everything is futile, because in and through this world, I have to reach that state. So, with my part of me clinging to this mundane life and just parroting the word, this is all mundane, this is all futile, doesn't help. What I have to see is, yes, intellectually understand that there is a higher truth, there is a higher reality. I am now experiencing something which is not absolutely real, because the absolutely real is something else. But in and through this, looking at this apparently real world clearly with the eyes of clarity, from the understanding that comes from the Gita and the texts, from the advice that we get from our teachers and our elders, I try to look at all of this with clear eyes and suddenly I see the higher truth there. So until we get that experience, we will have to work in and through this world. The example that is sometimes given in Vedanta is that if you want water, and so you have, let's say, you start digging. And in olden days, that's what people did. When they wanted water and there wasn't any water source nearby, they started digging. So you start digging, and you need to dig. You'll need stuff. You'll need some equipment. You'll need an axe and so on. You go on digging, and finally you get water. Now, when you get water, water is what you wanted. You didn't want all these equipment. The purpose of the equipment was only to get you to the water. Once you get it, then the equipment, you don't need it anymore. Or it's like you want to cross a river, and then how would you go? And you don't know how to swim. So you need a boat. So you take this small little boat, you row a rowboat, and you row your way and go across the river. Now, when you reach on the other side, you don't need the boat. In fact, that boat, which was so helpful to you in crossing the river, now it's a burden. A boat is a burden on land. I mean, you're going to carry it on your head. So that has to be left behind. So similarly, this world may be futile and mundane, but it's in and through this world that we are going to find a way out. And so we must use this experience, our present experience, in as best a way as possible, following all the guidelines that have come down to us from the Gita and other texts. And then, in and through this world, we'll reach the other shore. And when we reach the other shore, we can then say, oh, this is all futile, but not before that. Interpretation of verse 2:11. Let me read the verse 11. Ashocyan anvashocastvam prajnavadamscha bhashase gatasoon agatasoonscha nanusochanti panditaha. Thou hast been mourning for them who should not be mourned for, yet thou speakest words of wisdom. The truly wise grieve neither for the living nor for the dead. Now all grief is connected with the body and mind. Now, should not grieve means, it just seems like, does that mean that the truly wise are heartless people? Like, oh, if somebody dies, should not be grieved for. That's not what is intended. Because if that was the intent, then these walls and the roofs and all these buildings and all these objects, they would be the most enlightened beings. They don't grieve for anybody. But no, that's not the point, that we don't grieve, but we don't allow any of these experiences, whether it is grief or whatever, to overwhelm us to the point that we become forgetful of our duties, our responsibilities, or our choices in life. That's the thing. Of course, we are human beings, we have a heart. If people who we see suffering around us, of course we are going to feel. Of course we are going to grieve. But that grief, if it is within my control, through that grief, I will be able to find a way to try to remove that suffering as best I can. I may not be able to remove it totally, but at least it will goad me to a positive course of action. That's the idea here. Not just sitting and grieving and saying, I don't know what to do. I mean, that's essentially what Arjuna was doing. He was saying, he's gone to the battlefield and say, oh, I'm not going to fight, because he's just grieving this whole fate of having to kill my own people. That doesn't solve the problem. And so, yes, grief is a natural part of life, but even as we grieve or even as we rejoice, through both our joy as well as our sorrow, we must have retain that clarity within our mind to know that what I should do going forward, that I don't become the cause of greater suffering. In fact, can I become an instrument to try to remove suffering as much as it is possible? That's the idea. What is one way to experience the Atman? Seems like that's bliss. The best way to experience the Atman is to, every time I think of myself as not the Atman, to try to remind myself that's not me, which really means most of the time. Because so much throughout the day, the way we think, the way we speak, the way we do our work is just based on the strong assumption that I am this. And therefore, other than the times when we are reading these specific verses telling us, oh, you are the Atman, maybe for a few seconds, intellectually, we think, I am the Atman. But other than that, most of the time we go through life as if we are not that. And so the simple way is to remind ourselves as often as we can that I am the Atman. We don't have to go on making it very visible. There is that one incident from Ramakrishna's life, that there was this one wandering monk who came to Dakshineshwar, and he was a very staunch student of Vedanta. He would not ever use the pronoun I. He would always say, when he was hungry, he would say, this is hungry. This thing wants to go there. Kind of speak about himself in the third person. And a lot of people thought, how enlightened he is. He has this no sense of I here. And so that was, when you see, we don't normally see people speaking of themselves in the third person. Sometimes babies do. And so when Ramakrishna saw that, he was so childlike. He thought, oh, this is great. And so he started saying, oh, this wants to do it. And then his disciple, Mathur Babu, he went to him with folded hands and he told Ramakrishna, he said, Baba, you don't have any body consciousness. You don't have anything. You don't need to resort to all those gimmicks of saying this and that. So it's not about not using the pronoun I. Feel free. I think a good Vedanta student should not appear like some freak, some abnormal person in this world, and people are saying, what's wrong with this person? I think externally, you can be just like everybody else. Say, yes. You can say, I'm eating, I'm hungry. But even when we say that, deep inside us, I should know I'm not the one who is hungry. This body could be hungry. I can say I'm happy, I'm grieving, but deep inside, somewhere in the corner of my heart, my mind should say, it's the mind that is grieving. It's the mind that is rejoicing. These are characteristics of the mind. So if we can find more and more opportunities to remind ourselves that we are not the body, not the mind, but something beyond that, that would be a good way to take us towards that higher reality. Oh, there are lots more questions. Maybe. Well, we'll have another 5 or 10 minutes of it. It is intellectually convincing that Atman or Brahman is all there is, that is true, and sensory experience false. Why is it that 100% of experience is out of reach from the real? I don't think 100% of experience is out of reach from the real, because people do experience the real in their meditation. When we have a really deep meditation, that real is experienced. So it's not 100% of experience is out of reach. Do you have a practice you can share to help transcend the mind? I've got lots of practices. All of this Gita is filled with those practices. So I'm sure now and then these practices will be discussed going forward. But there isn't any one. I mean, one practice, as I just mentioned, is to remind ourselves of our nature. But there are many different ways to do that. Do you mean to say that identifying the Atman with death is what brings us suffering? No, we are not identifying the Atman with death. What we are identifying the Atman is with the body. And it is the body that falls sick. It is the body that undergoes the process of aging. It is the body that dies. So it's the body that dies, but if I think that body is me, I will feel I am the one who dies. That's the thing. So identifying is with the body, not with death. If there are 24 hours in a day, how many hours are there in the night? Oh, that's a good question. Well, 24 hours in a day really means midnight to midnight. So if you want to break it up into day and night, just for equality, we just say 12 hours in a day, 12 hours in a night. It's never so simple as that. Sometimes people consider that sunrise to sunset as a part of day, and then sunset to next sunrise is a part of night. So there are many different ways you could divide the day into day and night. If Atman is everything, how can one distinguish between Atman and material creation? Isn't material creation Atman as well? Yes, you cannot distinguish between the two because they are really not two. So it is the Atman, because of ignorance, is appearing as a material creation. Again, just to kind of put a little bit nuance to it, the Atman has not become that creation. This Atman has now, because of ignorance, become this human being. And as a human being, I am seeing this creation. So it's not so much about the world outside. The divine being that the Atman is has now forgotten itself and is seeing itself as a human being. And as a human being with eyes and all the sense organs, I'm encountering the world. When I stop being a human being, the world that this human being is experiencing will automatically disappear. So that's how it occurs. And so the Atman and the divine being and the Atman are not two different things, just as the rope which is mistaken for a snake is not distinct from the snake. You cannot say this is the snake and this is the rope. That which is the rope appears as the snake. So that which is the divine appears as human. That's how it happens. Is there any way to negate the effects of our karma, or is it inevitable we have to experience the results of our karma? There are two ways. There are certain kinds of karma in the scriptures whose effect can be negated by doing what is sometimes called the prayaschitta karma. That is, certain things are mentioned in the scriptures. If you do this, then certain effects of past karma can be neutralized. Certain, now the word certain is important. Not everything can be neutralized. So it's possible to do certain prayaschitta, certain how do you pronounce that? Expiatory rites. If you can do some of those things and certain things can be neutralized, yes. A second thing is, we don't have to experience all the results of karma. The simple example is this. It's almost getting lunchtime for those of us on the East Coast. So I'll end with this example related to lunch. Now, here is a plate in front, and if there are people coming and serving food in your plate, it's all served there. Now, we might say, well, etiquette requires that I must finish what's in my plate. But no one is pointing a gun at me and saying, you have to finish it or I'm going to kill you. So just because something is in my plate doesn't mean I have to eat it. Karma is a little bit like that. So this is the plate of my life. And now karma comes and puts, here are the results of your good karma, here are the results of your bad karma. These are the results. Eat them. That's why it's called karma phala, fruits of work. So, here are these fruits. I don't have to eat it. No one is forcing me to eat it. Unfortunately, just looking at the fruit, I have no idea which is sweet or which is bitter, or which is sour, or which is not good. They all look same. And the only way to know what kind of fruit it is to say, let me say, this is so sweet. Let me try some more. And then suddenly some extremely bitter and terrible fruit comes. And I said, you know what? Forget it. I don't want it. I just don't like it. And then I just sit there. It's like that, what was that, this thing? That test they have for children? How many if you take one? Marshmallow. The marshmallow test. It's a little bit like that. So here you have these things in front, and then you feel like, I'm not going to have it. These are terrible. And after some time you feel, no, they all can't be terrible. Maybe some maybe. Let me try this one. And you try. That's essentially how our life is. We keep on trying different things in life. We are trying to get different experiences, different work, different relationships, different pilgrimages, different travels. Every time we hope, this will make me happy, this will make me happy. And some things do. Some things do make me happy. Some things not so much. Some things are terrible. Now, all of these things, the karma is poured in my plate. No one is forcing me to eat it. So one way would be to say, you know what? I've seen through it. Some are going to be sweet, some are going to be terrible. I've had enough of it. I don't want it. You don't have to eat it. But that requires not just willpower. It needs a certain amount of wisdom also to arrive at that point to say, I want neither the good nor the bad. I want neither joy nor sorrow. The problem with us is we cannot say that. The problem with us is that what pretty much everyone says, I want the joy. I don't want the sorrow. I want to be happy. I don't want to be unhappy. Unfortunately, they are in the same plate and we can't distinguish. So the best way is, if I don't want sorrow in this world, I must be able to say no to happiness in this world also. And that might seem like, oh my God, so then what's left in life if I just push the plate away? What's left in life is, if I'm able to push the plate away, I'll experience the kind of joy that I may have never experienced before. It's a much higher kind of joy. A kind of joy that passeth understanding. Not just peace that passeth understanding. Even joy can be of a type which passeth understanding. That joy is the door of Satchidananda. So, the negative effects, not just the negative and positive, all effects of karma are not inevitable. They become inevitable because of my ignorance, my greed, my forgetfulness. If I wake up the way Krishna wanted Arjuna to wake up, all these negative effects would go. So we'll continue with this study next Sunday. Om Jananim Saratam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. Let's conclude with a prayer now. Om. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto you.